Under the golden sun, a massive yacht worth $150 million rested on the sparkling blue sea. Its silver rails gleamed, the decks shone like polished marble, and the wealthy passengers were dressed in designer suits and glittering dresses. Laughter and expensive perfume filled the air. Every step on the deck seemed like a performance to show off wealth. Into this world of pride and luxury walked a man who looked completely different from everyone else. It was Keanu Reeves. He didn't wear a tuxedo or gold watch. He had on a plain black t-shirt, faded jeans, and old sneakers. His hair was a little messy, and he carried himself quietly, not trying to catch anyone's eye. To him, this was just another day, but to the guests on the yacht, his appearance was a puzzle. They looked at him with raised eyebrows and quick smirks. One woman whispered, behind her diamond glass, "Who invited this drifter?" Another man chuckled, "Maybe he's lost, he doesn't belong here." Their laughter was sharp like knives dressed in silk. A few younger guests took out their phones, snapping pictures as if he were part of the entertainment. Keanu ignored it. He moved across the deck calmly, his steps light and unhurried. He paused to watch the waves, as though the endless horizon meant more to him than the glitter of diamonds. Some guests rolled their eyes, annoyed at how he acted like he belonged. Others laughed louder, hoping to embarrass him into leaving. The truth was, Keanu could have walked into the yacht with an air of command. He could have dressed in the finest suit and demanded respect. But that wasn't his way. He had always believed that real worth came from character, not from clothes or riches. He let their comments wash over him like passing waves. A waiter carrying a heavy tray stumbled near the edge of the deck. The expensive guests gasped but did not move. They clutched their glasses and clung to their conversations. Keanu, without hesitation, stepped forward and steadied the tray before it could fall. The waiter whispered, "Thank you," in surprise. No one else even noticed. They were too busy, laughing at the stranger among them. A group of men leaned back in their chairs, looking at Keanu with mocking smiles. One of them said loudly, "Who let the ordinary man aboard? He must have mistaken this for a ferry." The others burst into laughter. Keanu only smiled gently, giving no answer. His silence made them uneasy, but they covered it with more jokes. Some people in the crowd grew curious. They whispered, "He looks familiar, doesn't he?" But the idea faded quickly under the weight of arrogance. For most of them, it was easier to believe he was a nobody who had wandered into their perfect world. The sun sank lower, painting the sky in orange and pink. The music played on, the laughter grew louder, and Keanu stood alone at the side of the yacht, gazing at the sea. His eyes reflected the calm strength of a man who had seen both the highest lights of fame and the darkest corners of loneliness. He knew what the others didn't, that wealth without kindness was only emptiness. To the crowd, part one of this story was only a moment to mock a stranger. But beneath their careless laughter, something much bigger was waiting to unfold. The man they ridiculed would soon reveal a truth that would shake every guest aboard that luxury yacht, and they would never forget the lesson that came with it. And the laughter didn't stop. In fact, as the yacht sailed farther into the sea, the jokes about the strange man became louder. More guests noticed Keanu and joined in. Some whispered behind wine glasses. Others chuckled openly. The rich guests treated his plain clothes like a costume, a mistake, something out of place in their perfect world of silk, gold, and luxury. A man in a white blazer and gold chain walked up to Keanu with a mocking smile. "Sir, are you looking for the kitchen staff? You might be on the wrong deck," he said loud enough for others to hear. The crowd around him laughed. Keanu just looked at him for a second and gave a small smile. He didn't speak, didn't defend himself. He just turned back toward the sea. His silence made some people uncomfortable, but most kept laughing. A group of women nearby started taking selfies, making sure Keanu appeared blurry in the background. One of them joked, "Let's call him the ghost of broke past." Another added, "Maybe he sneaked in through the loading dock." Meanwhile, a little girl in a pink dress was watching everything. She was the daughter of one of the wealthy couples. Her name was Sophie. Unlike the others, she didn't laugh. She walked over to Keanu and asked softly, "Why are they being mean to you?" Keanu looked down at her with warm eyes and smiled gently. Sometimes people judge others without knowing their story, he said. She nodded, though she didn't fully understand. Her parents quickly pulled her away, embarrassed that she had spoken to that man. Back near the buffet, another guest whispered, "I heard he's just someone the owner invited out of pity." Someone else said, "Maybe he won a contest to be here." And so, story after story was made up on the spot, all based on how he looked. Keanu moved to a quieter part of the deck. There, one of the waiters approached him nervously. "Sir, I'm sorry for the way the guests are behaving," he whispered. Keanu shook his head kindly. "You don't need to apologize. They don't know." The waiter hesitated, then said, "Should I let the captain know?" Keanu paused, then smiled again. "Not yet," he said. "Let's give them time." Back in the main lounge, the music got louder. People danced and drank under the glowing lights. But every so often, someone would glance toward Keanu and laugh. Again, one man, clearly drunk, walked up holding a glass of champagne. "Hey, mystery man," he slurred. "Want me to buy you a drink? Or maybe you prefer soda?" The crowd burst into laughter again. Keanu nodded politely. "Thank you, I'm fine," he said calmly. His calm nature made the guests more irritated. They were expecting him to either get angry or leave. But he just stood there, quiet, peaceful, completely unbothered. Some began to feel confused. Why is he still here? One woman asked, "Why doesn't he leave?" Another muttered. No one realized that the reason he didn't leave was because he didn't have to. He wasn't there by accident. And soon, they would all understand that even the captain of the yacht passed by at one point and gave Keanu a respectful nod, but the guests were too busy mocking him to notice the small signs. Later that evening, the sun dipped low and the sky turned purple and red. The yacht crew began lighting small lanterns along the deck. The party reached its peak. Music echoed across the waves. Laughter grew louder, and still, Keanu remained alone, quiet and smiling. The rich guests laughed harder, but deep inside, they didn't know why they felt uneasy. Something about the man's quiet presence, his patience, his peaceful eyes. It didn't match the picture they painted of a nobody. They didn't know the truth, not yet, but it was coming. The sky had darkened now, filled with tiny stars shining above the ocean. The music still played, but slowly, the mood on the yacht began to change. Not everyone was laughing anymore. Some guests had started to whisper quietly, not jokes this time, but questions. Who was that man, really? One lady asked her husband, looking over at Keanu, who was now sitting calmly near the railing, still dressed in his simple black t-shirt and jeans. The husband shrugged. "I don't know, but he doesn't look nervous." Another guest, an older man in a navy blue suit, stared at Keanu for a long moment. "I swear I've seen that face somewhere before," he muttered. "On a magazine, maybe." His wife rolled her eyes. "Don't be silly. That man looks like a wandering musician," but the truth was, something about Keanu's quiet confidence was starting to bother people. Not because he did anything wrong, but because he wasn't reacting the way they expected. He didn't argue, didn't leave, didn't act embarrassed. He simply existed with calmness in a place where everyone else needed to prove their value. One of the younger women, who had been posting party photos on social media, suddenly froze when someone replied to her story. She read the message, blinked, and gasped. Her eyes shot toward Keanu, now standing near the edge of the deck again. She grabbed her friend's arm. "You guys, that's Keanu Reeves," she whispered. "No way," her friend said, laughing. "He's probably just some guy who looks like him." "I'm serious," she said, holding out her phone. She had searched his name and pulled up pictures, photos of Keanu at charity events, riding the subway, taking selfies with fans, always looking simple and kind. A few guests around them started searching too. Slowly, the laughter faded and was replaced by confusion. It can't be him, can it? Why would someone like him be here dressed like that? Now more people were staring. Some looked embarrassed, others looked surprised. One woman walked toward Keanu, still unsure, and asked softly, "Excuse me, are you Keanu Reeves?" Keanu smiled gently and replied, "Some people say I am, That's all he said, nothing more. He didn't brag, didn't announce his fame, didn't even explain himself. And that made people even more curious. Guests who had laughed at him earlier were now suddenly silent. The man who offered him soda earlier dropped his glass. His hands shook slightly. The woman who called him a drifter now hid behind her friends. But Keanu didn't change. He didn't act like a celebrity. He didn't point fingers or call anyone out. He just stood there like he had the whole evening. Calm, peaceful, and kind. The same little girl from earlier, Sophie, came back. She looked up at him and asked, "Are you really famous?" He crouched down and smiled. "Some people think so, but I'm just a person like anyone else." Her eyes lit up. "You're the nicest person here," she said. That one sentence hit harder than any loud music or flashing camera. Behind them, some of the yacht staff, waiters, deckhands, cooks, watched everything. They had known from the start, but they respected his request for privacy. A few of them exchanged smiles now, seeing the guests realize the truth. One of the guests tried to act casual, walking up to Keanu and offering a handshake. "Hey man, sorry about earlier, didn't recognize you." Keanu took his hand and replied, "That's all right. You treated me exactly how you wanted to." That answer didn't come with anger, but it made the man feel small anyway because he understood what it meant. Now, the entire mood of the yacht had shifted. The same people who once laughed were now unsure how to act. Some left quietly to their rooms, others tried to get close to Keanu, hoping to fix their earlier behavior, but he didn't hold grudges. He continued being kind, answering a few questions, thanking the staff, and even joking lightly with a few brave guests who approached him honestly. The truth was out now. He wasn't just a guest. He was Keanu Reeves, and the people who had mocked him now realized they were the ones who truly looked out of place. The night was getting cooler as the yacht moved gently over the calm ocean. The stars above were bright and the wind whispered softly through the sails. But the mood on the deck had shifted completely. The loud music had been turned down. The laughter was gone. Now most of the guests were quiet, watching Keanu from a distance. Some still didn't know what to say. Others avoided eye contact, embarrassed by how they had treated him just hours ago. Keanu didn't hold on to any bitterness. He simply smiled and continued to enjoy the evening like nothing had happened. But something unexpected was about to take place. Something that would show everyone on board who he truly was. Not just a man, not just a famous actor, but a quiet leader, a calm problem solver. Near the back of the yacht, in the engine room below the deck, a loud warning beep went off. One of the engineers rushed to the control panel and saw something troubling. A section of the cooling system had failed. Steam hissed from the pipes and the temperature was rising fast. The engineer called the captain right away. "Sir, we've got a technical issue. Engine room 2's cooling unit just shut down. If we don't fix it fast, it could overheat and shut down the main engine." The captain's face turned serious. "Do what you can. I'm on my way." But someone else was already moving. Keanu, who had been quietly standing near the side of the yacht, overheard two crew members whispering in concern. He didn't say a word. He just began walking toward the lower deck. One of the waiters saw him and looked confused. "Sir, are you okay?" Keanu just smiled and said, "I'll be back soon." Down in the engine room, steam was clouding the space, alarms were blinking red, and the crew worked quickly but with worry. A wrong move could cause real damage, or worse, shut down the power completely in the middle of the sea. Suddenly, one of the crew members turned around and gasped, "Mr. Reeves? What are you doing here?" Keanu didn't hesitate. "Hand me the pressure gauge," he said calmly. "Let's check if the emergency valve has jammed." The younger engineer stared at him, confused. You know how this works?" Keanu nodded. "I've studied engines, not for movies, but because I like to know how things run." While the others stared, Keanu got to work beside them. He moved with skill, not like an actor pretending, but like someone who actually understood machines. He knelt down, twisted the release valve, and then instructed the team how to reroute the pressure. Above deck, some of the guests began to feel the slight change. The lights flickered for a second and the music paused. Murmurs filled the air. What's going on? Are we stopping? Is something wrong? The captain rushed past them, heading below, but by the time he reached the engine room, the worst had already been avoided. Keanu stood beside the crew, covered in a little grease but smiling calmly. "It's stable now," he said, "but you'll want to replace that pipe before morning." The captain looked around at his crew, stunned. "Did he just—" The head engineer nodded. "He did, sir. He knew exactly what to do." The captain turned to Keanu. "I don't even know what to say." Keanu shook his head. "No need, it's your yacht to command," but the captain replied gently, "Actually, it's yours, sir." The room fell silent. Back on the main deck, the guests had begun to gather near the stairs. A few had heard strange rumors that Keanu had gone to the engine room. When he finally walked back up, his shirt a little dirty, hands slightly marked with grease, a quiet respect followed him. No one laughed this time. No one called him a drifter. No one took selfies behind his back. One guest, the same man who had mocked him earlier, walked over slowly. "Did you fix the engine?" he asked softly. Keanu just nodded. "The crew did most of it," he said. "I just helped." And that answer, simple, honest, and humble, spoke louder than any speech ever could. The guests now saw him not just as a celebrity, but as a man who didn't care about showing off, a man who stayed calm in a crisis and helped without needing applause and without anyone saying a word. The mood changed again. This time, not from shock or confusion, but from deep respect. The ocean was calm again, the yacht back to its peaceful cruise. But everything on board felt different now. The music played softly, but the laughter was quieter, the voices gentler. It was as if the sea itself had noticed what had happened. Keanu walked slowly back onto the upper deck. His shirt still had smudges of oil, and his hands showed signs of work. But his calm smile was still there. The same people who had laughed at him now looked at him with wide eyes and frozen words. One of the older guests whispered, "He really did fix the engine." Another replied, "He could have stayed out of it, but he didn't. He helped the crew." But that wasn't the only thing making people nervous. It was the way the captain now stood beside Keanu, not in front of him, but slightly behind, like someone giving space to a person of higher rank. And then it happened. One of the younger crew members was walking by with a tray of drinks when he turned and said, "Would you like a water, Mr. Reeves? I can bring it to your suite." There was a pause. Some guests turned sharply toward them, confused. "Suite?" someone repeated. "What suite?" The crew member suddenly realized what he said and went silent, but the words were already out. Woman near the bar stepped closer and asked the captain directly, "Whose yacht is this?" The captain looked at Keanu, who gave a small nod. The captain took a breath and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "This yacht belongs to Mr. Keanu Reeves." For a second, no one moved. It was as if time froze. The same people who had pointed fingers, who laughed, who joked about his clothes and guessed that he was poor or lost, stood silently now, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. One man dropped his drink. The glass didn't even shatter. It just rolled away as he stared. A woman who had taken photos of him as a joke now quickly deleted them, her face turning red. And slowly, whispers turned into silence. Guests didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to fix what they had done. Keanu looked at all of them, not with anger, not with pride, just with a soft, understanding expression. A man stepped forward, the same one who had called him a nobody earlier. I'm sorry," he said, his voice dry. "I didn't know." Keanu nodded. "That's okay," he said calmly. "But maybe next time. It's better not to judge someone by their shirt." That one line went straight into everyone's heart. It wasn't loud, it wasn't angry. It was just the truth, spoken gently. A few guests lowered their eyes. Some gave nervous half-smiles. Others just stood still, unsure how to act around him now. And still, Keanu remained the same. He didn't ask them to leave. He didn't give a speech. He didn't change clothes or suddenly act like a king. He just stood there, kind and quiet, like he had from the start. That's what shocked people the most. Not that he owned the yacht, but that even with all his money, all his fame, he had let them mock him, and never once showed off. The little girl, Sophie, walked up again and looked around at the adults, then whispered, "I knew you were a good guy." Keanu bent down to her level and smiled. "You were the only one who didn't laugh." Her parents came forward, clearly ashamed. "We're so sorry," her mother said. Keanu only nodded and patted Sophie gently on the head. Then something beautiful happened. One of the guests clapped just once, another followed, then more, and soon the entire deck filled with applause. Not fake, not forced, but slow and respectful. Not because Keanu was famous, not because he was rich, but because he had shown more strength in silence than any of them had in their loud conversations. The captain stepped beside him and asked softly, "Would you like to say something to the guests, sir?" Keanu looked around and said, "I'm just happy everyone's safe and enjoying the evening." Then he paused and added, "It's a beautiful night. Let's make the most of it." And with that, he walked back to the edge of the deck and looked out at the sea just like he had before. But now no one laughed. They watched him with quiet respect, understanding that the real power on that yacht wasn't in gold watches or expensive shoes. It was in kindness, patience, and quiet strength. The soft glow of the yacht's lights reflected on the gentle waves. The ocean was calm, but the hearts of the guests were not. Most of them stood or sat in quiet thought. Their laughter from earlier seemed far away now, replaced by a strange mix of regret and respect. The truth had settled in like the night sky above them. They had mocked a man, laughed at him, whispered behind his back, pointed at his clothes, called him poor. And now they knew. He owned the very deck they stood on, the luxury yacht they thought was far above him. One by one, guests tried to make sense of it. Some remembered their own words and winced. Others replayed how they had ignored or insulted him for no reason at all. And now, they wanted to say sorry, but didn't know how. The woman who had taken selfies earlier walked up slowly. Her face pale, she held her phone in both hands and said, "Mr. Reeves, I want to apologize. I shouldn't have laughed or taken your picture like that. I'm really sorry." Keanu looked at her with calm eyes and gave her a small nod. "Thank you for saying that," he said. "It takes courage to apologize." Another guest, the man in the white blazer who had called Keanu a drifter, stepped forward. His voice shook slightly. "I misjudged you. I thought you didn't belong here, but now I see." "I was the one who didn't," Keanu smiled gently. "We all make mistakes," he replied. "What matters is how we grow from them." More guests joined in. Some offered quiet words. Others could only manage a nod or a small gesture. But the message was clear. People felt ashamed. Not just because Keanu was rich, but because they saw what kind of person he truly was. He could have embarrassed them in return. He could have called them out, thrown them off the yacht, or made a grand speech, but he did none of that. His silence had spoken louder than any insult ever could. The captain stood nearby, watching everything. He had known from the beginning who Keanu was, but had respected his wishes to stay low profile. Now he stepped beside him and said softly, "They see it now, sir. They see the difference." Keanu shook his head. "I didn't come here to teach them a lesson. I just wanted to enjoy the sea. The ocean doesn't care who you are, it treats everyone the same." That line stayed in the captain's mind. A few minutes later, a small group of guests approached Keanu again. This time they didn't come with apologies, but with something else, respect. One woman, older and elegant, said, "Would you like to join us at the table for dinner?" "It would be an honor." Keanu thought for a second, then nodded. "Sure, I'd like that." He walked with them to the long dining table set under soft lights. The mood was quiet, but warm now. As they sat down, one of the guests pulled out a chair for Keanu, not out of fear, but from respect. During the meal, they asked him questions, not about his movies or fame, but about life, kindness, and why he had stayed silent while being mocked. Keanu explained, "I've learned in life that people often judge what they see. They forget to look deeper. But if we react with anger, we only feed the problem. Sometimes silence lets the truth speak louder." The table went quiet after that, not because they didn't understand, but because they did, completely. Later that night, some of the guests gathered on the deck to watch the stars. Keanu stood with them, still dressed in the same simple clothes, still smiling. One guest said softly, "This might be the first time I've ever felt small, in the right way." Another added, "I used to think success looked like a diamond watch. Now I think it looks like grease on your hands from fixing an engine." Keanu didn't reply. He just looked up at the stars and let the silence answer for him. And then something surprising happened. A young waiter brought over a glass of water, handed it to Keanu and said, "Thank you for not being like them, sir." Keanu raised the glass slightly and said, "Thank you for seeing me." It was a simple moment, but everyone nearby felt it. That night, no one saw Keanu as just a celebrity anymore. They saw him as something more, a quiet reminder that true class isn't loud, it doesn't shine in gold, or brag through words. It's quiet, honest, kind, and unshaken by the opinions of others. And Keanu had been all of that from the very beginning. Even when they didn't see it, the night grew deeper and the moon cast a silver path across the ocean. The luxury yacht floated quietly, the loud music long gone. The guests no longer danced or showed off their clothes or jewelry. Instead, they sat together in small groups, talking softly, thinking deeply. Something had changed in all of them. Earlier, they had been proud, loud, and full of judgment. They had laughed at the man in plain clothes, not knowing he was the owner of the yacht, not knowing he was Keanu Reeves. But now they had seen more than just his name. They had seen his heart, his patience, his strength. Keanu walked along the deck slowly, enjoying the cool air. He passed by guests who smiled at him now, not because of fame but out of respect. Some of them stood up quietly when he passed. Others nodded as if to say sorry again, even without words. The little girl, Sophie, came up to him again and held out a small flower she had picked from a vase near the dining area. "For you," she said shyly. "You're the nicest person I've ever met." Keanu knelt down, took the flower and said, "Thank you. That means more than anything else I've heard today." Sophie smiled wide, then ran back to her parents, who watched with grateful eyes. Inside the lounge, a few guests were talking. "I can't believe how calm he stayed," one said, "even when we mocked him. He taught us something without even trying." Another added, "I feel embarrassed, but also thankful." Some guests began sharing their own stories, moments when they had judged people unfairly or when they had been judged themselves. It was like a wave of honesty had swept over the yacht. The man in the white blazer, who had mocked Keanu earlier, sat alone by the railing, staring out at the stars. Keanu walked past and paused beside him. The man looked up, surprised, then stood up quickly. "Sir, I don't know what to say," he said. "I was wrong, I was rude, and you still treated everyone with kindness. You didn't have to." Keanu looked at him and replied, "Kindness isn't something we give only to people who deserve it. It's something we choose to offer because we know how it feels to be judged." The man blinked, then slowly nodded. "I'll remember that," he said. "Truly, I will." As the hours passed, guests began to change in small ways. One man who had been bragging earlier about his cars and houses now sat with a deckhand, asking about his life. A woman who had ignored the waitstaff earlier now helped pick up empty glasses and thanked every crew member she passed. Even the crew noticed. One of the waiters whispered to another, "It's like they're all different now." The other nodded. Mr. Reeves didn't lecture anyone. He just showed them what grace looks like. By midnight, the atmosphere on the yacht was peaceful, not fancy or flashy, just quiet and warm. Keanu sat at the very front of the yacht, looking out at the endless sea. A few guests joined him, sitting at a respectful distance, not to take pictures or ask for autographs, but just to be near him. One of them, a young man in his 20s, asked softly, "Can I ask you something, sir?" Keanu turned his head slightly. "Sure. How do you stay so calm when people treat you badly?" Keanu thought for a moment, then said, "Because I've learned that what others say doesn't change who I am. Their words don't make me less, and if I react with anger, I give them control over my peace." The young man nodded slowly. "I wish I had that strength." "You do," Keanu said. You just have to practice it. Another guest added, I came on this yacht to feel rich, but I think I've only become richer by meeting you. Keanu gave a soft smile. True richness has nothing to do with money. It's about how you treat people when you have nothing to prove. The wind blew gently, carrying his words across the deck like a quiet melody. That night, many guests went to bed not with stories of parties and yachts, but with a lesson they didn't expect. They came for luxury, but found something more meaningful, and it was all because of one man who chose kindness over ego, silence over pride, and grace over anger. The sun began to rise over the ocean, painting the sky with soft shades of gold, pink and orange. The waves shimmered in the morning light, and the yacht glided calmly across the sea. The peaceful sound of water replaced the noise from the night. Before, everything felt fresh, like a new beginning. On the upper deck, a few guests had already woken up and gathered quietly to watch the sunrise. They weren't loud or dressed in flashy clothes this time. There were no loud jokes or fake smiles, just silence, respect, and a deep feeling they couldn't explain. Keanu Reeves stood at the front of the yacht sipping a cup of tea. His clothes were still simple, his expression still calm. He didn't try to stand out, but everyone noticed him. He had changed the entire mood of the trip, not with power or fame, but with his actions. One by one, more guests came out to join him. Some brought coffee, others just stood quietly. A few of them looked around as if they were seeing the ocean for the first time. It felt different now, more real, more peaceful. A man who had been one of the loudest guests on the first day stepped forward. He looked nervous but honest. Mr. Reeves, this trip, it started as a chance to brag, to show off I brought my best suit, my biggest watch, but I think I'll go home with something far more valuable. Keanu nodded slowly. Sometimes we find truth when we stop pretending. Another woman stepped closer. You could have embarrassed all of us, you could have kicked us off the yacht, but instead, you let us see who we really are without saying a word. Keanu smiled gently. I've made my share of mistakes too, he said, but life teaches us every day. We just have to listen. That morning, no one asked for autographs. No one asked for pictures or interviews. They just wanted to be near him, to listen, to understand. The little girl, Sophie, came out holding her favorite book and sat quietly near Keanu. He looked down and smiled. You're up early, she nodded. I didn't want to miss the sunrise. He looked at the horizon and said, it's the best part of the day, quiet, honest, and full of hope. Her parents stood nearby, watching the moment. Their eyes said everything they couldn't say out loud. Thank you, sorry, and we'll never forget this. After breakfast, the yacht returned to the harbor. The crew worked smoothly, but even they seemed more relaxed, more cheerful. They had seen guests come and go many times before, but this trip had been different. One of the crew members whispered to another, this is the first time people are leaving better than when they came. As the guests prepared to leave, each one took a moment to say goodbye to Keanu. Not like a fan to a celebrity, but like a student to a teacher. The man in the white blazer came last. He shook Keanu's hand firmly. I'm going to teach my son what you taught us, he said. Not with words, but with actions. Keanu replied, that's the best way to teach. Sophie hugged him and said, will you come on another boat trip again? He chuckled softly. Maybe, but even if I don't, just remember what we talked about. I will, she promised. The guests left one by one, walking off the yacht quietly, not rushing, not trying to show off. Some of them even left their expensive watches and jewelry behind as gifts for the crew. They had arrived as proud people looking to impress, but they left with something much greater, a lesson in humility, kindness, and true strength. As the yacht emptied, the captain walked over to Keanu and said, you didn't just host a trip, sir. You changed lives. Keanu looked at the ocean again. Sometimes the smallest waves reach the farthest shores, he said, and with that he walked back into the yacht, not needing applause or attention. Just a quiet man who had reminded everyone what truly matters. That trip became a story shared again and again, not because of the yacht's price or the celebrity who owned it, but because of the lesson it carried, Don't judge by clothes, titles, or appearance. Judge by character, by kindness, by how someone treats others when they have nothing to gain. And so, the man they once laughed at became the man they would never forget. The man who stayed silent while others mocked him. The man who helped fix a problem without bragging. The man who forgave without being asked. Keanu Reeves didn't need to prove anything. His actions said it all, and everyone left that yacht knowing they had witnessed something rare, not just a celebrity, but a truly good human being.